Glenn, welcome to the Mindful Podcast.
Dermot, it's really honored to come and say hello and have a chat with you. The last time we spoke really properly was after a U2 gig in Dublin, I believe, and that was a great chat. I really enjoyed that conversation that night, and I can only imagine where we're going to go now.
Yeah, well, I've just been in a way, I'm glad I haven't really seen much of you since then because we got to save it all up for this conversation. So I'm really honored that you took time
Yes,
to talk to
great
me. I
trip.
know you're in a hotel in Las Vegas at the moment, um, and
Yes,
I suspect
I'm in Las
it's
Vegas.
better shape than most people there.
Do you know what's really interesting? We had a night off last night, and I went down to meet. I went down to say hello to Dan in the lobby. He was going to see the Michael Jackson. There's a Michael Jackson kind of tribute act that's on here. He wanted to know that I want to go, but yesterday was my day for what I call unpeopling. It's where basically I don't be around anybody on a day off. I don't want to see another human. So I just met him in the lobby, and I went, "No, I'm going to have a little walk around here." And I walked out from the escalator, and there were so many people moving on. I won't say where we are, but we're in a nice hotel. There's people everywhere. And I just walked out with the energy and I went, no, no, this is not unpeopling. And I just went, no, not for me. I came back up to the room. So even with a night off in Vegas, I chose to just chill out in my room, work on some music, um, do a bit of journaling and just chill out, just stay away from everybody because I need to empty the tank, you know?
Well, you have to have balance generally for any kind of regular people, but in your job where you're in a very unnatural setting of having thousands of people flinging love at you every night, there has to be a way to decompress from that and from, I guess, you can't have it all in your outbox. You got to pay some attention to your inbox as well.
Yeah, that's very good. Very true. And I suppose you have to just, I just need, I'm a Cancerian and we need a long time, as well as we need people that are good people around us too. But we also need to stop and let our energy kind of regenerate, you know? So I always know when it's time to do that. And I just step away. I just become very quiet and I step away and isolate. And I need that time on my own to just, as I say, decompress. And like, I like that word decompress, but for me, it's more about unpeopling. Also, a lot of things I was chasing when I was younger. First few times I was here in Vegas, we're like, oh my God, I'm going to see this. And oh my God, I'm going to do that. And when you go and do all those things and you've done them all, and, I suppose I'm just lucky in that I've done a lot of things and I'm at the point now where it's like, you know, I heard somebody say, I think it was Robbie Williams said, I don't go out anymore because I've been out and there's nobody out there. And in a way for me, in a way for me, it's kind of like that. I've went and exhausted all possible avenues in many ways, even in the quest for wisdom, enlightenment, knowledge, all these things. I mean, I can tell you some mad adventures I went on um to try and figure stuff out and try and, get the ripple effect off maybe an enlightened being. And God, that led to me emailing a mystic in Bakewell. That's where it was. I hired a car, drove down. I stayed in B&B. The guy said, "Meet me at 6:30 outside the church in Bakewell." I did, and he was just sitting there on the chair outside the church with a little cushion beside him, and I just sat down beside him, and he just smiled at me, and we went into meditation. Now I'd meditated for like maybe a half an hour before, or whatever, but this went on for quite a while. So I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking maybe if I was near him, it would bleed onto me in some way, or the pull of what he had going on might affect me. And I got a sore back. We ended up hanging out and having a chat. It's such a lovely man. John is his name. What's his second name again? It's been a while. I figured that out before we get to the end. But I discovered really, I suppose within 12 hours that what he had, he'd found for himself and that I wasn't going to find it or get it off him. That it's a very unique journey to everybody. So I ended up having to leave early and I drove the hired car to Manchester Airport and flew home. And I kind of was laughing at myself that night because it was like all this external reaching isn't going to get me what I want, you know? Um, I, I don't drink anymore. I haven't in 13 years. And people say to me, oh, people often give Ireland a hard time. They say, oh, Ireland's, just a drinking culture and you think it's harder for you there and all. Years ago, I would have said, yeah, it's all, I would have said it's really tough and blah, but I can't blame Ireland. I can't blame Vegas. I can't blame America. Everything that's going on. out there is a direct reflection of what's going on in here. So after all of those years, I've started to realize that, it's an inside job. And no matter where you put me in the world, I can't really blame something outside me. I can blame my perception of it as to why I might behave a certain way or what might drive me into party mode and switch on Party Glen. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to get them all back now and I'm going to go out in Vegas and it's going to be 48 hours and no one's going to know what hit them. But ultimately, that all starts and begins inside me. So,
Mm.
when you kind
What
of
do you
realize
do?
that,
I'm interested because it's a part of me that is always in there. You call him Party Glen, and I have
yeah,
round the clock Ronnie, which used to be my nickname. And
nice.
I, I've spent years sort of, fighting with that version of me and wishing he wasn't there and, giving out to him and scolding him. And in recent years, I've realized, you unless you make friends with those shadow parts of ourselves, they're always going to want to get your attention. How do you
Yeah.
deal with Party Glenn if he wants to be heard? How do you give him his outlet in a less destructive way?
That's a good question. I suppose for me, this is slightly off track, but it's exactly what I do. I call it spinning. If I start to spin, which can happen, and I've learned how to deal with it. What I do is, I do I have it nearby? I actually do, and if I show you, it's actually worth showing you this, just so it makes the point. Here it is. This comes everywhere with me in my hand luggage. This little book, and if I'm to open this up, and it's funny, I was showing the lads the other day. Danny was he couldn't believe how small. He was like, "Oh my God, your handwriting is so tidy and so small." So right, so what I do with this is this goes back as far as let me see 2014, where are we? 2000 or sorry 2013. I write I put F and G line down the middle and I write five things I fear, five things I'm grateful for. Now back then it was 10. Now I only have to do five because I don't spin as much and I don't need to spend
When
as much time.
when you say
But I still
spinning,
do it.
what do you mean? How does that manifest for you? What are you experiencing?
Okay, for example, we were playing, let me think, when we were doing Crow Park, and that was a big high gig, 82,000 people. Day before, it's like, what if I trip? What if this goes wrong? What if I can't play? All the what ifs start to kick in. Spinning could be that person hasn't called me back. Why haven't they called me back? Maybe there's something else going on. Maybe there's something I haven't thought of. What about the other day when they said this thing to me in that tone of voice with that inflection? What if that meant this? What if this means that? And if that means that, then that means this. And it's just the domino effect. It's basically rumination over and over
Yeah.
and over. Um, and it might be the funny thing is, right, in this actual book, if I go like since 2013 all the way up to now, all my greatest fears, there was one or two that I was kind of like, you were kind of on the money there, but I mean, 98% of them never happened. And you can kind of track it. It's like a wave going up and down. And I track it and then I go back. I write the date and where I am in the world, the country or the city I'm in. And then I go back to see, okay, let's go back and see what was I worried about a year ago? What was my fear? And I look at it. And then I go back another year before that and I go, was it the same fear? And I find like a theme running through those things. And my greatest fear was being alone. That was my greatest fear.
Wow. Because I guess, we would think it's, am I going to make a mess of it? Or I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know.
that's in there too.
But like, I guess I'm just trying to think as a performer, that would probably be my biggest fear going into a show is that you're going to make it. But how did the fear of being alone pop up? Where was that coming from?
I think it all comes, I mean, I think a lot of it comes from your childhood. I've still to narrow down what or where in my childhood that is. I've some rough ideas, but the funny thing is, years later, I was alone and I was sitting in my kitchen in my house that I had just bought, and I was sitting there with my bare feet on the ground, and I was looking back over the fears, and I was like, "Isn't this interesting? Here I am alone, and I'm not afraid." And I am alone. And I think my mother used to say to me, she used to say, and I never knew what she meant, but she used to say to me, until you can truly be by yourself, you can never be with somebody else. And I never really got it until a few years ago when I really learned how to be alone. And I mean, throughout my life, there was always an aspect of reaching outside myself to find happiness. It was a codependency thing, a big insecurity thing. Am I good enough type of thing? Until I actually sat down, and there was one point where I just decided to really, really dig in, and I did. This sounds a bit crazy, but it's just the nature of it's kind of my personality. When I do something, I go all in. I did like intense therapy for 3 months. I did a year's therapy in 3 months. I went every day. And that was pretty intense. And I journaled every day. Like straight after that session, I would sit for an hour and journal everything I'd went through, do the fear and gratitude list every night. And at the end of that, the end of that 3 months, I found I learned a lot about what was going on, about a lot of the cycles I was in. And then I also realized I got to a point where I was on my own, and I realized, you know what? If this is my lot, if this is it, and this is how it's going to be, and I'm going to be on my own, I'm okay. I'm happy with this, you know? And it was such a peace that came with that, because it's like you don't need anyone outside of yourself to fulfill yourself. You can fulfill yourself. You have what you need. And sometimes the fear and gratitude list is as simple as I have a roof over my head. I'm doing a job I love. I've got great family around me. I've got good friends. I'm healthy. I've got, I'm willing to learn from my mistakes. I'm able to apologize when I'm wrong. I'm able to self-reflect. I'm able to journal. I've got good people in my corner, you know, um, and there's loads of possibilities ahead for me because I'm not in destructive behavior that I
Yeah.
would have been in years ago, you know?
I think
Um,
if every band member, did intensive therapy, journaled every day, had gratitude and fear lists, there'd be a lot less bands breaking up, that's for sure.
yeah, well, I think, yeah, a lot of that stuff, a lot of all of that is all just fear. And, it's either fear or love. Those are the two opposites of the pole. We're moving towards one or running from the other at all times. And it's trying to get the pendulum to be somewhere in the middle. It's not
Mm.
perfect. I mean, I still have days where I wake up and when I say spin, I'll chew on something and then I'll go on a little spin. But if I just grab the pen and just stop for a second and go, do you know what? Just write the fear and gratitude list. I wrote them this morning. It just somehow recalibrates those inner wirings of the brain, the neural pathways. And I think the habit of doing that helps your brain stop looking at the negatives, which are again all self-perceived, and switches them on to what's good in your life. Because, the mere fact that I'm able to just get up now, pack my bag and walk down, hop in an elevator, meet everybody downstairs, go to the show, not shit my pants and be terrified and get up on stage in a stadium full of people and actually enjoy it is a beautiful thing. And sometimes you can take that for granted because you're doing it so long. But if I really dial it back to the basics, I can go, you know what? It's actually a really good day today, and obviously I've had a lot of loss. My dad died, my mum died, Mark died, but I'm like, but I know that my mum and dad are together. They're in a better place. They're not in the world without each other. I know if I was to bring them here now and talk to them for 5 minutes, they'd be like, get on with your life. This is going to go very quickly. You're about halfway through. Like that, you're going to be with us. So you know what? Enjoy yourself and be kind to people, do the next right thing, and try to make memories for yourself and leave something decent behind and leave a good example. And that's it really. I think it's that simple. As I learned from in my quest of searching, I inevitably ended up looking in the Bible, and I was reading the book of Solomon because he's the wisest man in the world. So at the end of his life, he tries to figure out what makes a meaningful life. And he had tried everything, and he had literally done everything, spent money, and went through all the senses and done it all. And he said basically he discovered at the end, what made for a meaningful life was good food to eat, good friends, good work to do, and a faith in God. And he said anything after that, and you could drive yourself insane trying to figure it out. So I went, well, let's look at those four. Have I got them in my life? And I was like, I have got them in my life. And if I focus on them and water them, then life is, and don't do my own head and try to, but what's enlightenment and who are these enlightened people and what does it mean? And if I just do the next right thing, if I do the next right thing, the next right thing will come after the next right thing. That's what happens every time. So I don't have to think too far.
Yeah. I love the idea of going around trying to find the guru who's going to give you the secret
Yeah, I did that.
password or something, and my teacher
That's
David
right.
G,
I did the
who I'm sure.
Hoffman process in the UK,
Oh,
the
did you the
5 day, 5 or 6
Wim
day.
Hof?
Yeah, Yeah, I did that, the residential thing. That was mad. I mean, it was really great to push your boundaries. That helped me kind of do some acting classes because there was so much I had to face in that. Going in and standing in an acting class was like it was a doddle compared to the Hoffman process. But honestly, at the end of it, I didn't like. I don't think I was as it's every day is an ongoing process, I believe. You know, every day you are a new version of you waking up, and only you can put the car in first gear or second gear, or you can sit in neutral, or you can be in reverse and not even realize it. You have to take control of the wheel. And I really think also what's important is the people around you. It's a great saying in the Bible, iron sharpens iron. There's a good friend of mine, a Christian, who told me that. Um, and he said, you know what, who you surround yourself with is very important because misery loves company. So I try to avoid, I'm there for my friends and I'm willing to listen and help to anyone venting because I have great friends that do that for me. But I think you need to know when you're around emotional vampires, and that's a tricky one because my nature is a rescuer. If I see straight in on the white horse, I fix it all, no problem. But sometimes you can't fix it all. Sometimes,
Mm,
sometimes fixing it is not fixing.
yeah. Um, Speaking of fixing, I guess the loose topic for our conversation today, other than just catching up, and we'll get to all the exciting things that you're doing and the album and the tour and all that in a few minutes. But I guess you mentioned it there, and I don't know how much you want to talk about it or how much you want to
Sure.
go there. But you mentioned loss of your parents, and of course Mark, your beloved bandmate, who
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had the great joy to meet over the years from the inception, from the very start of
Yeah.
the script success, right through to reasonably recently, I suppose, in the last few years. And sadly, he passed away last year. How have you been healing through that? Because it's your work as well. You're never not reminded of it, I would guess.
Yeah. It's been very tough, Dermot. It's been really tough because when I've lost, obviously, family members and stuff, you go through the process and you have a funeral and people come and then you step away from it. In this case, it's just it's been really hard because we've we took some time to try and figure out would we do something, would we carry on, what were we going to do? And then we stepped into okay, just a bit of music arrived and we thought okay, let's see what happens. It's been very tough because like you said, every day is a reminder. There's not a day goes by, and I mean this, that I don't think of Mark. It's everything we do is a reminder of him. And I miss him in all kinds of various situations. We just did some radio promo here in America, me and Dan, and you normally head down to the radio station. They've got people that come in to watch you do an acoustic set. And we went to like one of the back offices, and while we were in there, it was a real it was a hard moment because normally we'd be in there as three of us. And me and Dan were sitting in there with the guitars as two of us. And I said to him, geez, I really, really miss him here right now. This is awful having to like be in America here and do this without him with us. And yet, like what I said about my parents, if Mark was to be here with me for 5 minutes, I know what he'd say. He'd say, get on with it. He was very much a proactive,
Mm.
positive, very push forward person. He was a big driving force of the band of kind of getting our collective energies together and pointing the arrow. Um, so it's been, I mean, those first few gigs were just so tough. We went outside to meet fans and stuff, and everybody was crying. And that was another moment that I can definitely put down as really tough because it was in England, and we walked out the back door, and Dan was shaking hands and saying hello to people, and I was doing the same. And we were at the barrier, and then I looked to my left, and there was no Mark. It was just two of us. So it's like getting a constant dagger into that party that's grieving. And then I went up to see Christmas time gone. I decided, oh, this would be nice. I'll go to my mum and dad's grave. So I thought this would be a great idea. Not a great idea. So I went there, and then I was leaving and I just broke into tears. And all the way home in the car, I thought of my mum, my dad, and Mark. And it was like, at that point, I didn't know who I was crying about. I was like, who am I crying over? It was like there was so much going on and so many images and like a kaleidoscope of all of it. But believe it or not, from the Hoffman process and from studying the Meisner's technique in acting, I kind of have a way of being able to open that channel up and let it out. Whereas before I might have pushed it down. Now, if I feel it, it's so weird. I kind of sometimes I might feel shit for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll be like, what's going on? Why do I feel bad? Like, I know I'm about to do these amazing shows and we're playing in this great place. Why am I feeling bad about it? And then, for instance, I was sitting in my kitchen in London, and my friend was with my son and sent me a picture of my son, and on him, my son's arm, he has a tattoo of a poem, words from a poem my mother wrote. And I was just looking at that picture innocently, and then I saw his arm, and I scrolled in, and that was like someone had pulled a stopper in me. I cried for about 40 minutes, and I realized for 3 weeks up to that moment, that's what it was. It was just the grief in me swirling around, trying to find a way out. And I sat there, and I knew, I went, oh, I've got to go with this. So what I do is I put on Max Richter, The Consolations of Philosophy, it's called. I put that on, and I play that, and it's very sad. And what it does is it helps me go deeper. And I play it, and I sit there, and I stay there, and I let it come. But the longest I actually timed it one day, it was the longest I cried for was 40 minutes. 40 minutes. There was tissues everywhere, and I was like, this just won't stop. But it was just a collection of grief. And I thought, I'm going to time this. I got curious about it, and I sat there and I kept playing the music, and it just kept coming. And then for some reason, the music of Forrest Gump reminds me of my mum. I don't know why. That came on in one day in my house, and I was floored. I just bang straight onto the
Mm.
couch, and I saw a woman in the supermarket. I let her go ahead of me, and she said thank you. And she reminded me of my mum. I had to leave all my stuff there and run out of the place and run home and just sit down and let it come. So I think, it's very hard, but I'm also really grateful that I'm able to cry, because I know some people that find that hard. And I think that's the gift of the Hoffman process and doing the acting stuff. They taught us how to do emotional prep, and I just found a way to open that door. So now I kind of know, and there's a buildup of that tension, and I feel sometimes I don't know, or someone might say to me, "Are you okay? Is everything all right? You seem a bit blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I'm okay." But without fail, a trigger comes along. It's like God just says, "You know what? Here's a little gift for you," and then you just, and then
Mm.
you just feel so much better afterwards. You feel lighter, and I believe that's just the trauma and the stress of the grief trying to find its way out of your body. It wants to get out, and if you don't let it out, yeah, I think that's what makes you sick, makes you just depressed, makes you anxious. Um, so I think that's part of the healing process, is to just let that channel open and let that come through you. And then for me, I suppose a lot of the memories start to turn sweeter. I can look at photographs now, and I have voice notes of my mum and dad, and I can go back to them as well and listen to them sometimes. But I miss them all the time, and I talk to them all the time. And I just, more so now, when I think about them and Mark as well, I just realize that this life is so short, and we need just to do what we want to do, and don't let fear get in the way, grab every opportunity you can. But above all else, um, let love be your compass, have loving people around you, and just don't get into dramas. It's too short to be caught in drama and negativity and arguing over stupid things that are going to pass anyway. I had a crazy moment on stage about 4 weeks ago, and it's so interesting because it was coupled with this. He's a meditation teacher online. Don Oakley is his name. I ended up writing to him and talking to him about it, and he sent me this huge message back. He's like one of these enlightened kind of dudes. But I was playing on stage in the middle of a song. Where were we playing? I can't remember. But I was sitting there playing, and for a couple of seconds, I was watching myself playing. It was very hard to describe or explain, but I was literally sitting there going, oh, "This is weird. I'm actually just watching me playing." And it was like, in that few seconds, it was like I realized none of it actually matters. But not, I don't mean that in a bad way. I realized that everything just is. So I was like, what the hell? What? And it's very tricky because you're trying to stay in the moment and play a show. But I was like,
Yeah.
so then on my radar, this guy appeared on Instagram, and I shared something of his, and he wrote to me and said, "Oh, thanks for sharing that." And so I wrote to him, and I said, I had this experience. And so he wrote back to me, and he said, this is what he said to me. He said, "Yes, it sounds like you're on the right track. It's the recognition of this innate awareness that is already present in as us, all where the power and freedom lies. The common worldview is that brain cells generate consciousness, but that remains an assumption despite decades of scientific effort to show how formless awareness can arise from molecules and such. However, if we go to our direct experience, what is observable is that there is an awareness of external objects and well as internal thoughts, feelings, and sensations. In other words, everything that we can ever experience appears within this awareness, whether it is a thought in our head or the image of the moon at night. Given the primacy of this awareness, we might become more curious about it. For example, are we not aware of both the good times, the difficult times, and the mundane times? We can notice that the awareness does not run away from the difficult times, nor is it damaged by them. On the other hand, the awareness is not enhanced by the pleasures, as enjoyable as they may be. It's simply present for the whole show. Similarly, the awareness is not tainted by whatever we may have done in the past, nor enhanced by meritorious behavior. It simply is, exactly as you say. We might also notice that this awareness is already quiet and at peace, whether the mind is or not. In that sense, it is a refuge from the roller coaster of life and serves as the stable center point from which to view life. Saying this in words can make it sound like it would remove us from life, but the actuality of it is that it frees us to fully engage in life without fear or grasping. At first, this awareness may be a place we visit like a vacation, but as a person spends more time functioning from that spaciousness, there is a shift of identity where we realize not just conceptually that we are this awareness, and this whole body mind experience happens within what we are. At some point, we may also become curious about whether this awareness is personal, or as this awareness is allowed to lead, it can feel like not knowing, but this awareness has a knowingness well beyond our mental capacities. It is also the source of true creativity, inspiration from source, wholeness, or whatever name you prefer. I hope this confirms that you are indeed on the right track. Best wishes.
Wow, that's
So I was like,
so much better a reply than anything I would go, be okay, cool.
yeah.
But I
But
guess
even the
it's
way,
it's you were able to observe the observer, which it's like
yeah,
zooming out a few times, and yeah, as you say, how
exactly.
how you managed to actually play the drums through that whole experience is
I
pretty
don't
incredible
know.
as
It was
well.
very strange, and it was only for a few seconds, but it kind of did something, and I kind of went, okay, hang on a second, and the longer I'm blessed to live and breathe and walk and learn more and more and meet beautiful people and have those like the way he come across, and I just shared something by him, and then I went, opportunity, I'm going to ask this guy about it, and then he wrote that to me. It just makes me realize again that the experience of whatever that is very personal to everybody, and everyone will have a different name for it, but ultimately I think we're all just trying to get out of our own way. That's the key.
Yeah. And I guess in terms
We're
of
in the way of what that is.
yeah, in terms of the healing aspect, you have to imagine that your ability to stand back and observe what you're going through with as little judgment as possible, literally getting out of your own way with the grief, that it has
Yeah.
allowed you that space to be able to process it in such a positive way, like you say, that you have this almost partnership with your body and your nervous system where you go, I think I need to release now. I can feel it building up,
Yeah.
and that's an
Yeah.
incredible skill to have, where you're just not resisting all the time. It doesn't make the grief any less sharp or heavy or intense, but I
Yeah.
guess it allows you to move through it without causing yourself
Exactly.
more pain.
I also think the therapy that I did, I always was afraid that there was like a place that you would go, which would be so terrifying and kind of annihilating
Mm.
on a level that would just completely tear you apart. I always thought that existed, but it only goes so far. You know what I mean? And I realized as I went through that process that I could go there. And then I think by doing that and by actually, facing what I feared and going into it, and just crying myself out completely, that on the other side of that, I had this moment. It was very interesting. At the end of that, maybe 2.5 months in, I was sitting at home in my house, and out of nowhere, it was one of the most profound things that ever happened to me. It was like a smile started on the inside, and it just kept growing and growing and growing, and I just sat there, and it was like the biggest joy bomb I ever had go off in my body. And I sat there, and I was like, "What is this?" And I just closed my eyes, and I was sitting there smiling for about 10 minutes. And I remember talking about this with a couple of people that I know, and the woman that I was talking to, and she said, "Well, what you've done is you've discharged all of this grief and trauma that you were carrying around with yourself, and so you've made room for the joy to come in."
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So that goes back to what I'm saying, as in we're in our own way. And from all the journaling that I did, and the beautiful thing about what I love about journaling is you can see how far you've come. You can go back to that time that you thought was really, really bad, and that you think, I've journaled at some of the hardest times in my life when I thought, how am I going to get through this? I don't know if I can manage this. Some of my fears would be, what if I can't handle this? What if I fall apart? What if it all goes away? What if I make a mistake? What if everybody, like when you, what if everybody leaves me? You know what I mean? Or what if I end up on my own? The big alone fear was the one. But here I am on my own. I chose to be alone last night, all day yesterday. I don't want to be around anybody yesterday. I was like, I'm chilling, and you just realize that you're never alone. You're always with yourself.
Mm. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're never alone. There's always you in there. So there's you looking out at this show that's happening out here. And wherever, as the fella says, wherever you go, there you are. There's the riddle. And I think probably
Yeah.
the biggest surprise I'll get when I take my last breath is so so that's what it was all about. I'll probably start laughing. I'll realize, what was I worried about? That was just a big lesson that I had to learn.
Yeah. I love the aspect of the cover of your new album, Satellites,
Yeah,
in that you have yourselves on the cover, but you also have the silhouette of the hooded figure, which is Mark, and he's there with you guys in essence.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's a lovely touch.
Yeah, well, he'll always be here with us, no matter,
Mm.
it's just the way it is. He's in the DNA of what this is and what we are. And, like I said, eh, he's everywhere, absolutely everywhere, in every hotel, in every airplane, on every bus, on every moment that we walk, he's there. And there's times in the middle of the shows you just can't, it's just one of those things. And it's been really hard, but also I'm very grateful for all the times that we had, and what we got to do as a unit together, and how far. Like, I remember coming to America for the first time, and Mark picking me up in his little green car he was driving, and I remember just recognizing in him that drive that he had and that ambition. And I think we all had that hunger, and we were all just desperate to get somewhere, but we all had unique parts of the puzzle that we didn't have alone. But when you put us together, we realized, hold on, together this could be something. So for me, America, when I come to America, I always think, because he knew how much I loved America, and to be here now in Vegas without him is shit. But to also be here also reminds me of the first time we came here as a band, and the crack we used to have. And he was great crack. He was always joking and having a laugh and pulling pulling things behind our backs, and in the moment that nobody else could see. Um, he was great for that, but just also a really solid figure. And you know, he was very much he was great kind of prepping me for when we were going to travel and all, and kind of gearing me up for that, and coaching me into getting my mind ready for being away from home. And so it wasn't as much of a shock when it really kicked off, because me and him had spoke about it a lot beforehand, and he was kind of telling me, this is going to be, it's going to get a bit crazy, and we're going to be traveling a lot and all. You sure you're ready for it? And this is what it'll be. And I was like, yeah, look, I had to be honest. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for it, but all I can do is step in and try. um and little did I know the extent of which that was going to take off. I wasn't ready for it. It took about
And
2 years to get used to it.
yeah,
um
well, looking at, online, the little clips that I see, whether they're the packed out record stores where you're doing the intimate gigs, or those massive stadiums you're playing, the stuff you're doing with Pink as well. I mean, that's got
yeah,
that for the last year or so. That must have been a lovely way of seeing what you do from another angle, maybe.
it's amazing, to get on stage. Like, again, America is just, we love America, and to come out here and get to go on stages that big in front of crowds that big,
Yeah.
and see the response we're getting. Also, then to dial it back to doing an acoustic set in a
Mm.
pub, and it's usually an Irish pub that we find, and we just rock in there with two guitars, two microphones, no big complicated sound system. It's just the two of us. We usually rehearse. It's so funny. We ended up busking a song. We hadn't played Break Even acoustically like that together ever before, and we had played all the songs we knew, and they were crying out for more. It was an amazing crowd in the Irish bar in Toronto. And he was like, "Will we do Break Even?" I was like, "Well, what is it?" And we're standing there where they're all screaming and shouting, and we're working it out. And we figured it out really pretty quickly, and we just went for it. I don't even know what key we were in. And it was I love the challenge of that, because it's like going back to the start, and you're completely exposed. If you cannot do that, people are not going to, they're just not going to give you credit or see you as a credible musician at all. If you can't stand up there with a guitar and with no lights and no smoke and no whistles and just play,
Mhm.
I think you just, you've got to be able to do that. And I love the challenge of it because it's like getting on stage with no stabilizers. There's nowhere to hide. You have to,
Yeah.
you're just literally, you're literally banking on the talent that you have. And for some reason with this band, every time we were put in a situation where the lights came on us, we always delivered. It was just a thing that we could bank on. And even when you were nervous, you knew, I know
Yeah.
once it's go time, it'll be showtime. And it
Yeah.
always has been that way. We all play out of the bag. Even now that it's just me and Dan, luckily we all sing, so we're still able to convey and put the song across with harmonies and stuff and all, and we sing well together. So it's just one of those things that clicked from day one. And even now doing the acoustics, it just, to be honest, we can barely hear ourselves in the Irish bars because everyone else is singing the songs. But
Yeah.
from what I can hear, we sound okay.
Listen, I want to talk about the album in a second because I absolutely love it. And I have my favorites off it. But I had a very lucky window into your career because I remember the script playing in a private 98 FM function where they bring in the advertising people, the people who want to spend money on ads, and it
Yeah.
was at some private function, and you guys were just, I think you might have just before you released your debut single, I think. But I remember standing back and being gobsmacked at how amazing you sounded, and that
Wow.
it was even in that setting, it was like, oh my God. And I remember saying to Dave, my co-host for many years, like, Jesus, that's different. That's something really, really different and special. Um, and
Wow.
I don't know if it was like that for you. I'm sure you guys, it was just another gig and you're like, oh God, let's just do the corporate and take our money and run. But it was so special. And then to see that essence, that skill, that talent just grow exponentially within a couple of years. You were world famous. Within a couple of months, you were world famous. Your albums were in the US, the top of the Billboard charts. You went straight to number one in the UK. It was like bang, we're here. But I'll never
Yeah.
forget that time when I saw you guys play in such humble surroundings, and you're like, holy shit, there's
You're very
something
kind.
really, really special there.
You're so kind. I think did we? I think we kind of recognized that when we got together. It just the chemistry was there. It was really kind of like we play. I remember we played our first gig in the Sugar Club, and it was one of those gigs where I realized everybody was paying attention. Suddenly, all eyes were on you, and I wasn't used to that. I'd been gigging for years, but this was like everyone was seriously paying attention, and I felt the pressure of that for the first year, and I really found it hard to look back at people. It took me, and it's funny that Meisner teacher in America called Sanford Meisner, he said that it takes 20 years to master the art or an art. And he said the art of acting or any art. And I kind of realized now what he meant because initially I thought it was just about playing well, playing in time, keeping the groove, and trying to look somewhat cool. But then with the band, as we kind of moved further and it got bigger, I realized actually you need to look at people. You need to engage with the audience. You need to make moments. You need to have eye contact with people. You can also make the gig special for them as well. It's not just about me sitting there and not ignoring everybody and just in my own little bubble. And also I need to use my body to play and kind of get into it and move more with certain things that I'm doing and emphasize sections, and all that came years later from being on big stages. You realize, oh, okay, there's more to do here. But when I actually realized, when I each month, I would say it took about 3 to 6 months, my head would go half an inch that way and it would turn to the left, to the left, to the left. And finally I could look at people. And then I realized, oh, actually, I can actually have a bit of laugh with this. I can look down at people and connect with them. And then you can see the effect it has on a person. And then you're like, oh, wow. Okay. So I get to engage with this whole thing. It's not just play the music, but it's also your energy is going out there, not just through the speakers. Because when you kick that bass drum, it's coming through these massive speakers, and you're moving that air every time you do it. And that's a bit of pressure too, because you realize if I kick it at the wrong time, everyone's going to hear it at the wrong time, and they're all going to look around and
Yeah.
go, "That was you."
Listen,
Whereas if I was a
I've
guitar
drummed in
player,
pubs, not stadiums, pubs,
yeah,
and the
you know what I
pressure
mean?
of
And
that.
the
I
pressure of
remember,
that was huge.
yeah, we supported the Saw Doctors in that big place in Belfast.
Oh,
What's it called?
brilliant.
Millennium? No, whatever that big venue is in Belfast. But it was the first time I heard my kick drum come out through a big
Yeah,
room speakers, and it was absolutely
yeah,
terrifying. I was like, get me
yeah,
back
because
to
you
the pub.
realize, yeah, you realize, oh, I'm actually, it's on here and everyone's watching. And because of
Yeah.
the way we set up the front, like Dan is, so we're all equally at the front. And I didn't want to do that at the start, but we rehearsed like that. And everyone was like, no, let's do that. And we can stay connected and play like we do when we rehearse. So everyone could see what I was doing. So that made even more pressure. And that took a long, 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 long time to get comfortable under that kind of attention. But I'd say 2, 3 years in, then I started to realize, no, actually, I can play with this. And then I started to understand that, you know what, you can actually have a bit of fun with this and make it a good night for people and look down at people. And when you stare at someone long enough, they usually freak out and look away. So, so you start to play with it a little bit, and then you kind of start engaging and laughing and just you start to, it kind of helps you make the night. And sometimes you can get distracted and make mistakes, but it's gotten easier now to kind of try and connect and look about, and you realize you can
Mm,
make someone's night just smiling down at them and then throwing them a drumstick at the
yeah.
end of the night and things like that.
Well, I can't
That
wait
took
to
years.
hear. I can't wait to hear the new tracks live.
Oh, they sound great. They sound really good.
I would
They
say
sound really good.
both ways is such an incredible, powerful tune. It's just brilliant, and what a way to kick off the album as well. Um,
Yeah.
there was a song, and I'll be honest, I was listening to it in the car, and I was driving down at night yesterday down to where I am at the moment. I'm down in a house in the west of Ireland, trying to finish off a book.
Oh,
So
look at
I'm
you.
living a hermit's life at the moment.
Beautiful.
Um,
Beautiful.
uh, but Falling Flying got me in the absolute feels, and I started to cry in the car listening to it. And I was
Wow.
going, what's this doing to me? What's the stick poking right now? And I guess since I left the
Wow.
radio last year, you I guess at some points I've kind of struggled with my own identity, because you build this persona for 20 years and then you leave it behind. And I've moved into the
Mhm.
full-time meditation space, and I'm learning a whole new set of skills. And some days, it's challenging. And I guess what it reminded me
Amazing.
was, sometimes you can feel like you're falling and you're out of your depth and you don't know what you're doing, but actually that's what flying feels like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it just kind of hit me. It was like, it's okay. It's okay if sometimes you feel like you're falling, you're still flying, And I guess to quote
That's
Buzz
amazing.
Lightyear, it's falling with style. Um,
There's there's a guy I need to mention to you, because it's very similar to you. I was thinking of him just before we come on to do this call. His name is Brian Douglas. He used to work for a radio station in America, a big, big station. We were just there. Case, I'll have to get the name for you again.
mm,
But he ended up, after many, many years of doing radio, switching to photography. And everyone was like it was a massive change. And I still stayed in touch with him. He's a beautiful guy, but he's now shooting stills on movies in LA, like huge, huge stuff. We're talking Morgan Freeman, all the top actors, like it's huge. But you remind me of him. And I was thinking your story is very similar to him, how you just suddenly changed. And I really admire the fact that it's a great example. You're great role models for people who are known for one thing and decide to change and just do it in spite of the fear, in spite of the primal fear that comes with what everyone knows me is this, but you actually have the balls and the courage to go, you know what, I'm going to take this on because that's where my spirit is moving me. And I think there's boldness in that kind of decision making, that when you move like that, the universe moves too. And you and him are two examples in my life of that happening in real
oh, well,
time.
that's
So
that's very
congratulations.
thank you. It's very kind, Glenn. But
No,
I
it's
was
amazing
actually
to see.
I was sitting in my kitchen today and I was writing a bit about purpose and meaning. And
Yeah.
I really realized in the last while that as different as it seems what I'm doing, to leave the radio and then go into, teaching mindfulness, seems like radical departures. But actually, I was thinking that my purpose hasn't changed. It's just the way I approach it is different. So my purpose has always been I want to make people feel happy, or bring them home to themselves. And I guess I traditionally did that through laughter. I realized that as a kid I could impact people's moods, by using a talent that I
Yeah.
had. So I still feel like I do the same
Yeah.
thing. I still, help people to feel better and come home to themselves, but I'm doing it just in a different way. And in a way that kind of gives me reassurance that I'm not completely crazy. I didn't just sort of decide to reinvent myself, that it's the same thing. I've just sort of uh, decided to do it in a slightly different way that suits who I am now.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose it's like your inner guidance system. They always say we always inherently know when something's right for us and also when it's wrong for us. That good instinct, that kind of little voice inside you that's kind of going, nah, this is not for you. And we ignore it and push forward. I ultimately know now that I can't lie to myself. I can for a little while, but even if I do, the house will come down. I have to be honest. Honesty is the only policy, you've just got to be. And no one can accuse you of anything if you're being honest and go, you know what, I just feel like this and here's why. And that's what authenticity was a big one for me. I did a lot of work on that one to be my authentic self and to just try and stay true to what my morals, values, and integrity is. Um, and a big one for me is loyalty, having people around you that will be there for the good times, will also be there for the hard times, and that you can they've got your back, you've got theirs. Those people, if you can have a few of them in your life, you're a blessed person because this life is not easy, as it says in M. Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled. The first line, life is difficult. And it's so true. It is. I love Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights, because he talks about, when things are going your way and you've got the green lights, enjoy it because something's
Yeah.
coming around the corner. At some point, it'll be a family member who gets sickness or something out of the blue, because that's life. It's really how we handle it then. And I suppose it's like, how do you deal with conflict when it comes in and those little sidewinders, and can you compartmentalize and not let it take over your day and get on with it? So I'm still learning. It's still, I mean, I feel like I think for me the first 10 years of being off the booze was like kindergarten, and it's only now in the past 3 years I feel I've started to get into the nitty gritty of the way my head works.
Really? And
Yeah,
why
I think
why do
so.
you why do you think it took so long? Why would it take 10 years off booze to give you that sort of clarity?
Because I had to go through a lot of pain in order to learn, and I also was in the way of myself.
Even without
So
alcohol?
oh God, yeah. I thought, put the booze down, everything's going to be amazing and rosy. Life is going to be so good. Incorrect. And that was a real disappointment. That
Well,
was a very, because
all it does is take the earmuffs off, and then you can hear what you've
yeah,
been hiding from.
yeah. And I think for those, I think for in different ways, I was, just fumbling in the dark. And sometimes like I said, sometimes I still spin and sometimes I still fumble in the dark, but I have tools that I can use to kind of straighten myself out. Or if I spin, I might go, you know what, we need to call a dear friend of mine who I trust and say, listen, I'm thinking like this, or this is going on. And I think you need a network of people like that around you who you can throw the ball to, and they can hold it for you and look at it and go, well, here's what the ball looks like. And it's a bit crazy. And then they can throw you their ball and you can hold their ball and go, yeah, this ball, you know what? This is just it's a bit mad, dude. You need to let go of this one. Um, so I think the first 10 years I did a lot of that stuff. I was just, I was still kind of on autopilot, and I thought because I stopped boozing, everything would be fine. But I think I had to do, yeah, I think coming off the booze was the physical low point, and then I had to go to the emotional low point. That was the second one. And now that I did that, I think that was around death, loss, my dad dying, my mum dying, Mark dying. Um, I had to just figure out, unscramble my head from all of that. And then I think I came out the other side of all that and went, oh, okay, wow, I was kind of on autopilot through a lot of stuff. Now I can kind of see clearly how that was. And now I can kind of see how I can live a better way and move towards things that are more beneficial for me and that I can be more beneficial for as well because they're better fits.
Do you meditate
Do you know?
regularly?
No, I have to be honest, not really. I studied Reiki years ago. When I lie down to take naps, I do Reiki on myself. Um, I did the 3 levels. And so every now and then I'll do that for myself. For me, playing shows is meditation. Even when I feel shit, even when life is hard, and even when I'm struck down with grief or full of anxiety, going on stage and having to perform is meditation. Because I can't, though I kind of can think of other things, but generally I have to be in the moment playing, singing, connected, knowing what the songs are, knowing what's coming next, where the breaks are. But there are times my brain can jump into two and I'll be thinking about something else while I'm playing. And that's kind of weird. And I often have to go, no, no, come back to the
Yeah,
moment, get back into, you know, you can get distracted
yeah.
sometimes with, did I pay that bill? Did I pay for this? Or did I call that
I
person?
love the idea of you. I love the idea of you just playing to like 50,000 people thinking, yeah, geez, did I leave the oven on earlier? Yeah.
Yeah,
Have
and
I
there is
played?
a dialogue. Don't be under, never be under any illusion. There's always that inner dialogue. It's what makes people perform well, I believe, is the inner dialogue telling them that they're shit. Because even as you're going to do that, though I was talking to a band the other night, there were great bands that were with us in oh, I can't remember where it was, but we met them after the show and we were chatting for ages and they were asking us loads of questions. And I was saying to them, the further in you get, I don't. It's like now I'm off the hook now. I used to put myself in music prison if I made one mistake on stage. That was it, music prison for the week. I'd be just sitting there beating myself up. Oh, you're terrible. This is shit. Everyone's heard that now, and you're a fake and all. I don't need to prove myself to myself anymore. I can play. I'm a musician. I've definitely earned the title of that. And if I make a mistake on stage, I'm also a human musician. I'm not a robot. And sometimes those little inaccuracies can actually make a groove, weirdly enough. And I remember we did supported U2 for the first time in Crow Park, and with the intro was me playing a bit of a drum thing, and I thought I made a mistake. That ruined the whole night, the after show party, everything. I bet myself up over that for the whole night. 5 years later, I'm sitting down on YouTube, and that a clip of that comes up. There was someone at the front who videoed it, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's this moment! I'm going to look at it now." So I played it, and then I rewound it, and I played it again. I played it about 10 times. I could not find what I was going on about. It wasn't there. So I learned a big lesson at that moment. I went, you know what? My mind can be my own worst enemy. I can perceive a thing and think it's this big, huge Hiroshima bomb after going off. But to the punter out there who's watching the gig, to them, they won't even notice it. It'll come and it will go. And even if it's obvious, now I can just go and I'll just keep playing. And the beauty of it is now that I can actually literally let that go. Whereas before, I'd be like, oh my God, and adrenaline would go off in the body. Like when you get a fright in a horror movie or when you nearly get hit by a car, you get your body lets out that adrenaline spike. That used to happen to me on stage when I'd nearly make a mistake. Everything would slow down and I'd be hit with adrenaline. And then I'd spend like 5, 10 minutes trying to recover from that in the performance. Now I don't do that. Now I just go, whatever. I literally, it's like a weed flying by. It's like just boom, it's gone. And I go, yeah, whatever. That's grand. I'll just keep going. Who cares? No one's dead. Everyone's alive.
Yeah. Glenn, I think there could be a lot of people flocking to you looking for the guru. You've got so much wisdom
Oh God, no.
on on so many
Anything I
things.
know is just by pain. And I'm still learning. So there's hopefully not too much pain ahead, but I think I've learned
Uh,
a lot.
well, look, we've learned a lot. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I
Uh,
know that you went to a
no
lot
problem,
of
Dermot.
effort to make this happen. Um,
No, it was
I'm
lovely chatting to you. I always love talking to you.
Yeah, and I hope when you do make it back to Ireland, we can meet up and have a chat
Me
because
too.
I
We must have a
we
coffee and just have a chat.
yeah we just I always feel like I'm scratching the surface with you that there's so much more to talk about. But thank you so much for your time, man.
Same, the same.
Congrats on Satellites, which I listened to 18 times in a row and I've learned all the words.
Wow.
So I
Oh my God.
something about that song. It's just
Interesting, isn't it?
got me. Yeah, so I'm
It
gonna learn
just
it
meets
on
you.
the
It
guitar
meets you
now.
at where you're at in your own life. Isn't music amazing like that? That it can transcend word. The words can transcend the intellect and hit the emotions.
Yeah. Well, look, sure, Danny's voice is so
Ah, he's great.
truthful. There's so much authenticity in that in his voice, you know.
Yeah,
Whatever he
uh,
sings,
he,
he brings to life.
he's singing better than ever. He's doing great. He really is.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm delighted for you. Give him my best wishes. Uh, be safe
I
on
will
the
indeed.
road, and hopefully we'll get to see each other when you come back.
Yes, indeed, Dermot. We will for sure. 100%.
Thanks, Glenn.
Lovely to chat to you. Have a great day and good luck with the book.